What's going on, everybody? Teach back again with the second part of my updated 2023 NFL mock draft. If you missed yesterday's video, that was round one of this updated mock. Today we're talking about round two on the mock draft database.com site, so you'll be able to see the picks from yesterday, but nonetheless I will still scroll across the top just so you can get another look. Thanks for coming back to the channel, everybody, and before we get started, I'd love to know, after watching this video, one, who's your favorite team, and then first round and second round haul, what would you grade this mock draft if this were to happen for your favorite squad? I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you liked it, you didn't like it, and if you didn't like it, what would you like to see different? What position groups, what player, all that sort of stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. And furthermore, one more piece of potential commentary. Yesterday I asked how many quarterbacks you think go in the top 10. Let's bring that question back. How many quarterbacks do you think end up going in the top 10 of this year's NFL mock draft? So let me hear what you think about your team in this potential mock draft haul, and then also how many QBs do you think end up going top 10 this year? But now let's go ahead and start talking about round two. We kick things off with the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick number 32. This comes virtue of the Chase Claypool trade and essentially gives the Steelers a second first round pick. I'm going to go ahead and attack the cornerback position. I'm going to go Emmanuel Forbes here, a guy who year over year at Mississippi State has just gotten better and better, which obviously a huge feather in his cap. And furthermore, guy who got his hands on the football a ton. I'm talking about 14 interceptions over 3 years and 17 pass breakups. And one more note, as if that wasn't impressive enough, of those 14 interceptions, 6 went back to the house. So a dude not only can get his hands on the football, but also playmaker with the ball in his hands. So for Pittsburgh, a team that's looking for a long-term, cornerback, CB1 of the future, I'd love to see them try to nab an Emmanuel Forbes and see if that progression curve continues in the right direction. Next up, we get the Houston Texans. We went Will Levis, Quentin Johnston in yesterday's video in the first round. Now it's like, okay, let's address the defense. Can't totally forget about that. I'm actually going to go Lucas Van Ness, and Van Ness may well go in the first round. He's one of those names that's getting hot, and maybe not at the exact right time. Maybe if you're an NFL draft prospect, you're waiting till like post combine to really get your name buzzing. But Lucas Van Ness is starting to get hot right now, and a guy who plays with a ton of strength, but also has speed to go with it. Comes with some inside out versatility, and for Houston, that's great. You could use help inside and out, and this team just needs to find a pass rusher for the future. Can't have Jerry Hughes kind of leading the way and hurries, pressures, QB hits, all that sort of stuff, because he can't play forever. And shoot, he might not be on the roster next year. So you're looking for that long-term guy. And Lucas Van Ness, again, a guy who's having his stock starting to rise pretty quickly here over the last couple of weeks. So love to see them nab him here early second round, if he's even still on the board at this point. Let me get to the Cardinals at pick number 34. I'm going to go back to the cornerback position. Garrett Williams got hurt in the Notre Dame game, and that kind of stymied his potential draft stock improving, but a guy who, like Forbes, got better year over year. Same thing we talked about Joey Porter Jr. yesterday, and you love to see that continued growth from a cornerback. We definitely saw that from Williams, and there was a reason me and so many other people were excited to see what he could potentially grow into this year. My preseason positional rankings, he was a top 5 corner for me. Didn't have as big of a year as we had hoped, but again, the injury against Notre Dame definitely didn't help. But also, I don't know if Syracuse really uses Garrett Williams to his full capabilities. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds, and to me, profiles as a really good man coverage corner and a man press corner at that. But of his 170 snaps, only 20 came in man press. Data courtesy of Pro Football Focus. So it kind of feels like Syracuse plays a whole lot of that soft zone, and that's just not really what Williams is best suited for with his talent and his skill set and his size in specific. So love to see him go to a spot where he can play a little bit more man press. And I don't know if Vance Joseph's going to be back as a defensive coordinator, but if he was, Garrett Williams is the guy for that, and that's the system for Garrett Williams. So I'd love to see that happen. We'll have to wait and see for what Arizona's going to do moving forward. Chicago Bears hold the 35th pick. I'm going to go Jackson Smith and Jigba here. Could go in the first round. And I talked about yesterday, the Ravens, especially moving on from Greg Roman, do make sense. Greg Roman and the Ravens do not use a whole lot of 3 receiver personnel. But for a team that's looking for a pass catcher and now moving in a different direction, maybe there is more 3 receiver sets in the future for Baltimore, and JSN could fit in that. And he could certainly go late 1. But when you're a guy who's going to run 4.5 to 4.6, it's hard to find a spot, and especially in an NFL draft with one last first round pick, right? It's hard to find that spot. So I think early day 2, one, it's been a sweet spot for finding good receivers. T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr. immediately kind of jump out there. And this could be a great spot for him to go in the situation that the Chicago Bears find themselves in. Obviously, we'll get more clarity post free agency, but not necessarily the most insane receiver class. So they could certainly be trotting out, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney as their outside guys. And then I think JSN fits in perfectly into that slot. The guy who isn't as fleet of foot, but don't worry, Chase Claypool runs fast. And Darnell Mooney's got plenty of speed. Those guys can be the vertical, and JSN can be the underneath intermediate threat. We're relying on his football IQ. We're relying on his route running and his ability to go win at the catch point. And I think all of a sudden it's like, man, that's a young wide receiver core with Justin Fields under center, assuming Justin Fields is going to be under center. Obviously, we traded down from 1 to 4 in yesterday's video. So we are holding on to Justin Fields in this situation. Man, all of a sudden that wide receiver room looks really interesting, young, cheap, and interesting for the Bears. Then we get to the Los Angeles Rams at pick number 36. We're going to have B.J. Ojulari have his slide, if you want to call it that. And he certainly could go late round 1, but a little bit smaller. But it may not give you a whole lot as a pass rusher, but adding him, as a run defender. But I think that's where if you add him into the Rams defense, ideally getting Aaron Donald back, ideally getting Greg Gaines back, that team has enough when it comes to run defense. Also, Bobby Wagner, in theory, if he doesn't retire, coming back. I think there's enough run defense to kind of hold the fort. And B.J. Ojulari in this situation could just line up as the guy opposite of Leonard Floyd, have Aaron Donald there in the middle. He's going to have one-on-ones. And the guy can win with speed. He can attack the outside shoulder. But this year at LSU, what really impressed me the most and what had him rise on my board was the ability to add that inside counter. He can add the swim spin that is, to attack the inside shoulder of a tackle. So it's great to see him adding more and more versatility into his game. And I think that's kind of what has propelled him in my eyes into that late first, early second round category. And the Rams are looking for an extra pass rusher to take that defense back to where it was in their Super Bowl run. I think Ojulari could be their guy, and cheap edge rusher for a team that spends a lot of money on a lot of other positions. That is the way to attack the NFL draft this year for the Rams. Seattle Seahawks on the clock. So yesterday we went Myles Murphy, Christian Gonzalez. I'm going to continue to attack the defensive line. I'm going to go Mazi Smith. This is as high as I've had Smith go, but number 1 player on the Bruce Feldman preseason freaks list, and athletes go early. Plus, he's 6'3", 337, so he has the size. You need to be that kind of that D tackle there to plug the middle. May not be as big as Siaki Ika at 358 pounds, but there's still plenty of size that you can get a little bit bigger once it gets to an NFL level and get to the a strengthened conditioning program at the NFL level. And now you're talking about a defense that added 6'5", 275 Myles Murphy to play the edge, or they primarily play a 4-3, so he's going to play that DN spot. And just kind of gives you a higher level run defender than a Boye Mafe and a Uchenna Nwosu. Let's go ahead and improve that defensive tackle group as well. And let's get a Mazi Smith, who not only a freak athlete, but also a guy who year over year got better in run defense at Michigan, and especially this last year with the Wolverines, kind of week by week got better and better against the run. So I think he's a guy who's just now hitting a stride. Love to see him added into a 4-3 defense, in specific to have him play next to Myles Murphy. That D-line could be scary. For Seattle, we also added Christian Gonzalez yesterday. So we're really focusing on that defense. We're going to go interior offensive line, just in case you were wondering what the next Seahawks pick. Pick number 38. I'm actually going to stick here in this defensive line category for the Raiders. I'm going to go Will McDonald, but let me just tell you, he's not an interior defensive lineman whatsoever. That's where he played. He played a lot of 4 and 5 tech at Iowa State, but I think that was just based out of their necessity for a guy to play on the inside. He's 6'3", 236. Kick him outside to play edge. No word. I heard some rumblings about a potential Chandler Jones retirement. Haven't heard any update. Tried to do some research before this video. Didn't get anywhere, so obviously a little bit of wait and see, but also Max Crosby's a guy you can play inside and out. So and I think Chandler Jones is big enough to be able to do something similar. Maybe not over the the center or anything like that at a nose, but you can keep those guys inside and have the situation where Will McDonald is the edge. So you could have a pass rush situation where Chandler Jones, Max Crosby, and McDonald are all on the field. But even if Chandler Jones comes back, he was a big disappointment. So just because you're paying him a lot of money, I wouldn't let that keep you kind of biased and blinded by the fact that, hey, if he's not producing, go get a guy on the field who will. So I think Will McDonald here, early second round's a good spot for his value, but he's a speed rusher. Pair him up with Max Crosby. That could be a really nice duo moving forward. And in a perfect world, Chandler Jones gets back on track, and now you have 3 legitimate pass rushers who you can all work in a rotation and passing situation. There's a way to work all 3 on the field at the same time. Carolina Panthers hold number 39 overall pick. I'm going to actually stick in this edge category. Again, this is an edge group with a ton of depth. Edge and corner, you're going to hear me talk about a ton throughout the rest of this draft cycle. But Zach Harrison here, a really interesting prospect, 6'4", 6'5", and ideal size, 260, 265, and strong. And I think he'll run 4.4s. Like when it comes to straight line speed, Zach Harrison has plenty of it. It's the bend that has previously concerned me, and a guy who he's been on my preseason edge rankings, honorable mentions the last 2 years, and I've just been kind of waiting for him to hit that consistent dominant progress, become that next Ohio State guy. Not necessarily like Bosa and Chase Young level of dominance, but just like a guy who's like, okay, there's that next really solid pass rusher for Ohio State that kind of is the headliner for that defense. But Zach Harrison really did not do that. There's weeks where, man, he looks really, really good, and there's weeks where it's like, oh yeah, Zach Harrison is playing this week. Where's he been? So that's unfortunate, but he did add a little bit more bend. I felt like I noticed it a little bit more this year. Maybe I'm seeing it because I want to see it, but that's when I revisit his tape. When I redo my edge rankings, I'll try to be keeping a keen and unbiased eye on it. But I do think he's a guy who gives the Carolina Panthers basically a second swing of the bat at the Yetur Gross-Matos pick, that big, strong, physical edge rusher, kind of harkening back to what I talked about with the Falcons when I drafted Tyree Wilson. Wilson with Arnold Ebiketie, you get power, you get speed, and it would set up the Panthers for something similar here, where Harrison could be the power rusher, and then you could have Brian Burns as one of the best finesse speed rushers on the other side. It allows you to play mismatch against opposing offenses and opposing offensive tackles in specific. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints, have gone Tanner McKee the last couple of drafts, but once again, I'm going to stick here at the edge group. I'm going to go Felix Anudike-Uzomah. One, you have Marcus Davenport as a free agent, and this is a team that always likes to have 3 pass rushers. That's why when they lost Trey Hendrickson, they drafted Peyton Turner out of Houston in the first round, who we haven't gotten to see a whole lot of. And I'm still hopeful that he could really hit his stride, because he's a high-level athlete. And if the Saints took him at the end of the first round, that's a team that's drafted pretty well. Like Mickey Loomis, faults for how he handles the capture. You can levy a lot of criticism against Mickey Loomis. Maybe the trade last year in specific to go get Chris Olave and forfeiting their first rounder this year. In hindsight, looks a little rough, but nonetheless, Chris Olave was a good player. So not knocking the player, more so knocking the process. Nonetheless, the guy drafts pretty well. I mean, that 2017 draft class is one of the best I've ever lived and seen. So if he wants to take a guy like a Peyton Turner at the end of the first round, I'm listening. Like, I'm intrigued to see what that is. Now I just need to stay healthy and stay on the field. But if they do lose to Marcus Davenport, a guy who's coming off a 1-sack season, so I am fascinated to see what his value is. Like, the NFL is focused on sacks, but if the guy only had 1, but he's a first-round pick, he's a high-level athlete, what does that contract look like? Anyways, we're not here to talk about Marcus Davenport and his free agency standing, but if they do lose him, this is a team, again, that needs to have 3 pass rushers. That is what their defense is built on. I think Dennis Allen, especially considering he's back as the head coach, he will continue to hammer the table for that. So this will give you a situation where Cam Jordan, Peyton Turner, and then Felix Anudike-Uzomah are your 3 pass rushers, and Anudike-Uzomah, not necessarily a great run defender either. So as that 3rd pass rusher, I think it suits his strengths well, where he can be a DPR, really focus on just pinning his ears back, using his speed to his advantage, and trying to attack the outside shoulder of tackles and trying to get to the quarterback. I think that's, especially early on, the best situation he can find himself in. Also, furthermore, Cam Jordan can't play forever. So long term, let's try to find that replacement for Jordan. Next is the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do the same thing I did last week. And we had Peter Skoronski, who I also had them taking the first round last week, and then Kayshon Boutte. I mean, I think this was like a win-win situation for the Titans. You get the offensive tackle, the potential left tackle of the future, or if you keep Taylor Lewan, the left guard upgrade until Lewan moves on, and boom, that's a Mike Vrabel guy. You're focused on the offensive line. You're focused on your identity, pounding the rock with Derrick Henry. But then here in the second round, you get the dude who's going to be blazing fast, one of the fastest 40s in this receiver room, one of the fastest 40s of the combine in and of itself. And now you look at that offense with Treylon Burks, who big, but can move pretty well for that size. Maybe not the 40 we thought he would run last year, but still, considering he's 6'3", that dude moves pretty well. And we saw him make some big plays deep down the field this year. And it's like, man, you can set up the play action with, how well they can potentially run the ball with Derrick Henry. And then the play action over the top passing targets are Treylon Burks and Kayshon Boutte. Sign me up. I need to see that now. I need to see that like yesterday. So I'd love to see that fit. Don't know if it'll necessarily happen, but man, you add that type of speed, and plus this team needs wide receiver help in and of itself. He's also a good satellite player, so make the game a little easier for Ryan Tannehill or Malik Willis if we see more of him next year. Yeah, I think that's a slam dunk addition for the Titans. But, Boutte's stock's going to be really interesting because, didn't have a great year at LSU. Originally said he's going to go back to school. Then he declared. So, how does that, potentially, what did he get told by the NFL scouting committee? And it's like, your value is this, that then made him want to go back to school. But then ultimately changes his mind. So there's a lot of things about Kayshon Boutte that just kind of interest me and I want to know more about, but I don't have access to the information. So let's just talk fits here. I'd love to see them add that type of over-the-top speed to the Tennessee offense. Cleveland Browns, I'm going to stick the wide receiver position. Let's go Josh Downs. Let's give this team a legitimate slot wide receiver. I know Amari Cooper can do that, but I think in this world, we have Coop play on the outside. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones continue to be the 6'3" vertical base wide receiver, kind of a poor man's Gabe Davis. And then you have Josh Downs playing the slot. And he's a great satellite player, but also a guy with an abundance of speed. I think you can work him deep down the field, add one more over-the-top speed weapon with Donovan Peoples-Jones in the mix. But minimum, this guy to be the extension of the run game and let him just be a force missed tackle machine. That's an addition of itself. And this Browns team feels like it needs another wide receiver. And honestly, you look at what Mitchell Schwartz is. Josh Downs is what Mitchell Schwartz could hopefully become. I think that's literally the easiest way I could describe it. He is what Mitchell Schwartz potential is. So go ahead and grab that guy who I think is that already here in the second round, and just trying to fill out that wide receiver room, get Amari Cooper some help, and obviously get some help for Deshaun Watson. Then we get the Jets at pick number 43. A bit of a faller here. When I was getting ready for this video, I was floored because I love Antonio Johnson. So he's this nickel corner, strong safety hybrid. I don't necessarily know if the Jets need a nickel corner here, but I think minimum Antonio Johnson could totally do that. But he also could be that strong safety, and then maybe you're moving Jordan Whitehead to play free, which he has done for the Jets, but also for the Bucs. So I think no matter what, it's an upgrade somewhere on the field there for the Jets. And he's 6'3", 200 pounds, and if he goes in the first round, I'm not going to be surprised. I like Antonio Johnson. So again, I was a little surprised when I noticed. I was like, man, he fell all the way here to the Jets. Well, the Jets get this opportunity. It's an upgrade at strong safety, or it's an upgrade to nickel, and ideally he'd be both. So I'd sprint the card in here if I were the Jets. I think you're getting great value here at 43 for Antonio Johnson. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons again. Yesterday we went Tyree Wilson, and now we're going to go Eli Ricks. It's been a while since I've had Eli Ricks in one of these mock drafts, but nonetheless, I mean, we didn't get to see a whole lot of him at Alabama, but the 4 games he played in, he looked damn good. And it's kind of the same thing at LSU, where he was really good as a true freshman, had some injuries as a sophomore, but when he played, he was good. Now the concern is going to be he had some injuries at LSU as a sophomore, only got to play 4 games with continuing back issues this year at Alabama. So it's like, what are we getting ourselves into with the injury history? I get that. And he's not necessarily the most insane athlete at the corner position. Like he's not, Keely Ringo running the 4.3s, Christian Gonzalez running 4.3, none of that. And he's not 6'2" like Joey Porter Jr., Ringo, and Gonzalez are. And he doesn't have the tape of a Devon Witherspoon that we saw this year. But nonetheless, highly touted recruit. We saw him be an awesome true freshman at LSU and then transfer over to Alabama. So if you have LSU and Alabama coveting you as a DB, that's pretty awesome. And I think that speaks a lot about his game. And again, the 4 games he played this year, he was really, really good. And it's amazing because he's not, again, the most insane, long speed, fastest corner in this class, but as a man press dude, he has such an explosive back pedal that he doesn't get beat over the top. So it kind of negates what you lose in that long speed and not being, a 4.3 guy. So I think he's a guy who's going to work himself into this, second round conversation, minimum day 2 type of guy to me. And I am fascinated to see where his stock ends up at. And I'd love to see what his combine numbers look like, because he's a guy where if he runs a faster 40 than we think, then late first isn't ruled out in my opinion. So anyways, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. We went Michael Mayer once again. Sorry, Packers fans. Continue to stick with that at pick number 15. And then here at pick 45, I'm going to go Andrew Voorhees. I thought about offensive tackle here, Anton Harrison. You got to start looking for that, David Bakhtiari replacement. He's just missed so much time. But my thinking here was, all right, well, Voorhees in a pinch can be your left guard. And I think Zach Tom proved himself to be a more than worthy swing tackle, but a potential right tackle of the future. Don't know if they'll bring back Josh Yimon too. That's part of what's going into my consideration here. They might lose Yimon, who kind of became that right tackle / swing tackle with Zach Tom. But let's say in this world, Bakhtiari ideally healthy, and then you have Elton Jenkins playing a guard spot, and he's played right tackle. So I think either way, he can play left or right guard. Give you an upgrade there. Voorhees at USC, primarily left guard. So ideally, Bakhtiari's healthy at left tackle. Voorhees plugs in at left guard. Josh Myers, our second rounder last year, is playing center. Elton Jenkins, just a true versatile, queen on the chessboard, playing right guard, and then Zach Tom over at right tackle. But, they've had so much time living without David Bakhtiari. I think that's legitimately something you have to consider and account for. So I think this move allows Elton Jenkins to be the left tackle of the future, or at least in the immediate future, if David Bakhtiari were to miss some time. You play Jenkins at left tackle, Voorhees is then there to occupy the space left by Jenkins at left guard. So I think it makes a lot of sense, but also you can just go straight up tackle here at 46. 45. Now we get to New England Patriots. This is where I'm going to have Anton Harrison end his slide. To me, again, he's offensive tackle 3 if you include Peter Skoronski in the mix, or offensive tackle 2 if you consider Skoronski a guard. So really like Anton Harrison. started for 3 straight years at Oklahoma, started as a true freshman, has a ton of pass protection work under his belt and a ton of experience as a pass protector, which I love. Yeah, sure, he could add some play strength, but I think he's already made growth there. And once he gets to the NFL level, that strength and conditioning program hits different. Like that dude is going to gain some strength. So I'm not really even worried about that. I think that will naturally just come with some time. And for New England, hey, you're going to be moving on from Isaiah Wynn almost assuredly. I can't really see a world where he's sticking around. So there's going to be a tackle spot open. I think you draft Anton Harrison, let him play left tackle, and you flip Trent Brown over back to right tackle. Get to the Washington Commanders here at pick number 47. With a little bit of a different name, so I haven't talked about yet here. So this, again, crazy deep corner class. Could have gone Tre'Vius Hodges-Tomlinson, who will run 4.3, smooth mover, a little small, but also had a ton of penalties at TCU. But he's scrappy, and if you like that in a corner, he definitely brings that to the table. Jalen Jones, we're going to have coming off the board here. I have Clark Phillips falling just because he's a little bit of a smaller corner. And I'm going to go with another 6'2" freak of a corner, Deonte Banks, also going to test pretty well at the combine. And I think the baseline for Maryland was lower than when I say year over year, Garrett Williams got better, and Emmanuel Forbes got better, and Joey Porter Jr. got better at Penn State. I think the baseline for Banks was a lot lower his first year at Maryland, but nonetheless did get better year over year with the Terps. So you like to see that growth continue. Also pretty close to home here. That'd be a fun story. Maryland guy getting to play for the Washington Commanders. That'd be fun. But you're looking for that long-term potential shutdown corner. But I think what this really sets up is like you have Benjamin St-Juste at 6'2" on one side and Deonte Banks at 6'2", 205 pounds on the other. So continued growth. Like to see that progression curve continue here. And just another name that I want to throw in the mix and I haven't gotten to talk about yet. So again, this quarterback room is crazy. Like there's going to be CBs flying off the board from rounds 1 all the way through rounds 3. You're going to get sick and tired of hearing corner at the podium. Then we get to the Detroit Lions here at pick 48, and also a little something different. And if you're a Lions fan, I'd love to know like how you feel about Tanner McKee here at pick number 48. You could also wait till pick 55, but I'm going to go defense there once we get there. Actually, it's going to be an offensive pick, but it's going to be someone to fill a void of a move you made in the offseason. But stick around, you'll see it 55. But unless Tanner McKee, I mean, you get Ben Johnson coming back, and I think that's just, further fire that they're going to keep Jared Goff around. Then what are you doing long term, right? Like who comes after Goff? Maybe they do just buy in and keep Goff as their franchise quarterback. Maybe. But also, I look at Tanner McKee's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the class. If I had to rank it, I'd probably go Stroud, Young, McKee, but, with like razor thin margins between each of them. And McKee, kind of like Levis. I mean, the situation in college is just not ideal. The offensive line was putrid. The David Shaw system, I think, kind of got worn out. I think that's why it was, kind of a good decision for Stanford and him to kind of part ways. And also no receiver talent. We're not talking about any of these Stanford receivers, playing on Sundays, right? So I think legitimately Tanner McKee could step into a situation at the NFL level and be better suited, especially if he goes to Detroit, where Ben Johnson's going to continue to stoke his stock in the right direction. I think he will continue to be a hot name when it comes to being a potential head coaching candidate for the years to come. But he'd be stepping into an offense with James Williams long-term, Amon-Ra St. Brown long-term. Who else ends up being that third receiver long-term? An awesome offensive line that is under contract for the next couple of years. So a couple of good running backs as well. So he'd be easily stepping into a situation that's better than what he had at Stanford, which, by the way, his time with the Cardinals, highest, graded thrower into tight windows per PFF's data. So the guy is deadly accurate and can throw into tight windows, but he also had the highest percentage of his throws into tight windows. So again, not an ideal situation, but he did make the most of it. So I'd love to see him get into a better ecosystem around him. I think Detroit, with a year sitting behind Goff, learning the offense under Ben Johnson, I think that could really set him up for a lot of success. So if you're a Lions fan, let me know. What would you think about Tanner McKee on day 2? Then we get back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to talk about do I want to go Robinson here? I'll go with Jordan Battle. Robinson or Battle here, I think make a ton of sense. You know what? Let's go Jamie Robinson. We talked about him at the very end of last week's second round mock, but a guy at Florida State who legitimately, you look at their snap count, and it's pretty even between strong, free, and slot. Primarily played free safety, which I think for Pittsburgh, I've been focusing a lot on Jalen Skinner being like a Terrell Edmonds replacement, that box safety, and then Minkah plays over the top. But also Minkah, when he is like the hook zone defender and he's coming down or right around that first down marker, playing 10 yards away from the line of scrimmage, that dude is lethal. And that dude reads quarterback's eyes, and that just allows him to be a true rover. And it's like, hey, watch the quarterback and go hunt the football. And then you could have Jamie Robinson play over the top. But nonetheless, adding a versatile safety where you can move Minka from free safety down into the box, or even play him in the nickel if he could be open to it, or Jamie Robinson could do that. I think that just opens up a ton of different avenues, and plus it's just an upgrade over Terrell Edmonds. So I'd love to see Pittsburgh move in this direction and take a Jamie Robinson here, a guy who played really, really well at Florida State this past season. Then we get back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yesterday we went Brian Banch here at pick 50. I'm going to end the slide for my boy Isaiah Foskey. I'm a Notre Dame fan, just in case you didn't know. He's an intriguing prospect. I'm not saying he's going to fall to 50. I still think of him as a top 50 guy, but I just want to know what his combine numbers ultimately look like. Does he have that explosive ability that teams are looking for? I think he naturally fits, a team that runs a 4-3. I think he's a better suited as a hand in the dirt pass rusher, but Tampa obviously run that 3-4 base, and I think he does scheme versatile. I think he can stand up and be a stand-up rusher. But I look at Tampa and it's like, in that playoff game where they lose to the Cowboys, it's like with no Shaq Barrett, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, like good young player, there might be something more to tap into there, but yeah, they need another dude opposite of him, and there's no guarantee Shaq Barrett comes back from injury as the same guy, and even if he does, a third pass rush would go a long way for the Bucs. I've been saying this for like 2 years now, so love to see them go edge there, and I think Foskey, really solid value there at 50. Again, I'm interested to see what his combine numbers is, because with a bit more explosive, numbers into his profile makes him a lot more intriguing and probably has him prevent a fall all the way down to 50. Then we get to the Miami Dolphins. I've been going Jahmyr Gibbs here. Totally could be in the cards here, but I'm going to go DeJuan Jones. Big, tall, 6'8" tackle from Ohio State, and it looked really, really good this past year. So this would, in theory, kind of complete that offensive line, because that's really the one last weak spot Miami has. Maybe they address it in free agency, but got to get an upgrade over Walker Little, and I think DeJuan Jones could be that. He suffers from smaller, speedy, edge rushers getting underneath him, because again, he's 6'8", but as a dude who's strong and a mauler in the run game, in that zone scheme, he could totally be a Mike McGlinchey. Like Mike McGlinchey, literally same size and kind of a similar profile to what DeJuan Jones is. I think absolutely he could be the Mike McGlinchey for Mike McDaniel's offense. And again, it would kind of just complete what that O-line has been working towards over the last 2 off seasons. Next up, Seattle Seahawks at pick number 52. I'm going to go interior offensive line here. John Michael Schmitz. I think he's a guy who can play either guard spot or center. So wherever you think there's an upgrade to be had, John Michael Schmitz can be that guy who played, 5 years of college football, ton of playing time, 4-year starter at that matter. So seen a lot of football, played a lot of good football as well in a Power 5 conference, right, in the Big Ten. So would love to see that type of addition to the Seattle Seahawks. A little bit of an older guy, so I don't know if round 1's in the cards, like an O'Cyrus Torrence, or again, if you consider Peter Skoronski a guard, he's going to go in the first round. But John Michael Schmitz is a day 2 pick. That's as safe as it gets, and it would be an awesome addition for Seattle, and be their first offensive selection here if this mock were to come true. Then we get back to the Chicago Bears at pick 53. I'm going to go defensive line, Mike Morris here, a guy who has some inside-out versatility. But, I'm ideally thinking of this as an edge. We've already added Jalen Carter in this draft class. So I'm thinking ideally the edge opposite of Trevis Gibson, but a guy with 9 sacks this past year with Michigan. I think a solid enough athlete, but I think strength is the biggest thing he brings to the profile, that and some good hands. So, just trying to find that guy to, it's hard to replace Khalil Mack. And it's even hard to replace Robert Quinn. Keep in mind, 2 years ago, led the NFL in sacks, right? Like 19 and a half. That's crazy. So it's hard to replace that type of production. But, take a swing of the bat here. Let's try to fill a hole. Let's draft a player at a high position value. Let's take a shot on Mike Morris, who is the next guy up in this long line of Michigan edge rushers that continue to be, top 100 picks. Then we get to the Chargers here at pick 54. And as promised in yesterday's video, I am going to go speed receiver. But a speed receiver I have not talked about. You could go Jalen Hyatt so you can have Keenan Allen continue playing the slot. That's the only thing I don't like about this pick here. But Nathaniel Dell, 100 plus catches at, I know it's Houston, but for a 5'10", 165-pound receiver to have 100 plus catches and 1,400 receiving yards is pretty awesome. Now again, Houston, that offense will inflate his numbers, but as a burner, that may be all they need. And I think he's a good route runner deep down the field as well. So he'll have to play the slot, which makes, Keenan Allen forced outside. Not ideal. I'd like to have, a speed receiver on the outside. You keep Keenan Allen in a slot where, he's not the most fleet of foot. I think that's where his advantage as a route runner is highest leveraged, right? So, but in this situation, you take the shot, you add the speedster, and, now the Chargers have fired Joe Lombardi, their OC. I never like seeing somebody lose their job, but I just don't think Lombardi was the guy for the job. I needed to see Justin Herbert push the ball down the field. So new offensive coordinator, hopefully we'll get a little bit more aggressive and force Herbert to push the ball down the field. You have one of the best arms in the league. Let's take advantage of it. Let's flip the field here. And I think adding a speed receiver like Nathaniel Dell could certainly do that as well. Let me get back to the Detroit Lions at pick 55. Let's go tight end here. I've been going Kincaid, then Musgrave, but here I'm going to flip the order here. Have Musgrave go 55, and then Kincaid 56 to the Jags. My thinking here is pretty similar to what I've said in past videos. You traded TJ Hawkinson, so clearly looking for a potential upgrade over Brock Wright. And Musgrave only played in 2 games this year, but put the athleticism on display, soft hands, and because he's a good route runner, he's a natural separator, especially against linebackers and against even some safeties. And he has good size to where he can even box out safety. So I think that makes a ton of sense. And you're just adding that much more firepower to the Lions offense. I'm really interested to see who, like, do they re-sign DJ Chark? So is that wide receiver room Chark, Williams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, or are they going to keep Josh Reynolds around? Or, what does that 3 look like? But adding a Kincaid keeps it to where even if they can't get a great third receiver option, it's really Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, but then they have the safety net with the tight end. And then for the Jags, we'll see what they do with Evan Ingram. You had a career year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they ultimately do bring him back. But if they don't, I think Dalton Kincaid can do a lot of the same stuff. I think Kincaid a little bit better of a blocker than Musgrave, but I am going to dive back to the tape and review that. But I don't think either one of these guys are like a Darnell Washington. I don't think you're getting like a plus level blocker here. But I do like Kincaid's ability to block a little bit more. But also I wanted to say, even if the Jags bring back Evan Ingram, I mean, Doug Pearson's the guy who, was getting a ton of success out of Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, right? Like 2 tight end sets could totally be in the cards here. And it allows you as an offense, like if Trevor Lawrence is under center and you have 2 tight ends, the defense can't cheat one side or the other, right? So you're just forcing a defense to play that much more on their toes. So love to see that, but also those 2 type of athletes, Kincaid and Evan Ingram, just present so many problems for linebackers to try to keep up. So also another route they could go, even if they do keep Evan Ingram around. If not, then they get a guy who's younger, cheaper, and they have control over for 4 seasons. Then we get to the Giants here at pick 57. I'm going to go back to receiver. I'm going to go Rashee Rice from SMU. Some gaudy numbers. Now, again, I know smaller school and in a conference that has some big offensive numbers in it. I understand, but 6'3", 205, can win at the catch point, but can also work down the field in a lot of ways. Well, he's the guy Kenny Golladay was supposed to be. So trying to find that Kenny Golladay replacement here, that contract. It'd be interesting to see if they ultimately can try to move on from it and try to save some money, or if it's another year of Golladay just kind of being irrelevant and then next offseason they move on from him. But I think Rashee Rice gives you what Kenny Golladay was supposed to be in this offense. And we went corner yesterday with Cam Smith. Now we're going to Rashee Rice. We're putting a lot of emphasis here on the perimeter. Assuming Daniel Jones is probably going to have to be their option. I just don't know if the Giants are in a situation to go find a better, player. And I think, Brian Daboll's got him playing pretty good football. He's playing sound football, right? He's gotten rid of those turnovers down the end of the regular season into the postseason. So now let's go give him that big body receiver. If Wan'Dale Robinson coming back healthy to man the slot. And I think you found some other nice contributors this year. So maybe those pieces stick around as well. But Rashee Rice, I think, totally worth the selection here. And he's just that big body receiver they're looking for, since Kenny Golladay ultimately was kind of a miss of a signing. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys, and we went linebacker yesterday. Going to continue to put the emphasis on the defense here. I'm going to have the fall of Clark Phillips III stop here. He's 5'10", 183 pounds. I've been saying this since my cornerback rankings. And, now it feels like kind of the narrative's caught up. Not that, I'm the smartest guy ever, or, I'm just, a genius and I'm ahead of the curve here. But, size can be a concern. Not only that he's 5'10", 183, but like arm length. Like there's just so many variables and measurables he's going to have to try to clear for teams to take a chance on him, specifically in the first round. But here back end of day 2, minimum for the Cowboys, hey, if his arms are short, we got an upgrade at nickel corner. So minimum here, it's an upgrade somewhere in that secondary. But ideally, maybe, the arm length, he checks that out and it's not an issue. Or he just kind of has a Roger McCreary type of season where McCreary gave us some big plays and got mossed a few times. But he also, despite the short arm length, still found a way to get his hand in the mix, still found a way to get his hand in the honey hole, as I like to call it, and poke it free. And maybe the same can be said about Clark Phillips. He played really well for one of the best defenses in the country at Utah. So if you're basing it solely off production, this is way too low for Clark Phillips, but I think the measurables are going to hold him back. But for Dallas, it's either an upgrade on the outside or it's an upgrade in the nickel. Either way you spin it, it's a good move for the Cowboys defense. Back to the Cincinnati Bengals. We went Darnell Washington yesterday here at pick 59. I'm just going to give him some insurance here on the edge. We're going to go Derek Hall. At this point, I say this a ton about a lot of teams that are really good, like, the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday when we went Nolan Smith. If you're a team that's going to win a lot of football games, you can put up a lot of points, you're realistically be playing from ahead. So therefore, like having a rotation with Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and Derek Hall in the situation is awesome. Now I know they still have, Cameron Sample there, and they still have Joseph Osai, just off-ball linebacker, but also pass rusher. I understand all that, but I think you can still put emphasis on that. And Derek Hall was awesome this year at Auburn, and like Will McDonald we talked about earlier on in this video, nice speed rusher coming off the edge. So also nice compliment to what Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard are too. So I think it just kind of rounds out that edge group. But also, again, if you're playing from ahead a lot, teams are passing a lot, it makes that rotation that much deeper, and it makes it that much easier to say, hey, Hendrickson, go ahead, come on out. We're going to get fresh legs out there, and then you can get some plays from Derek Hall or whoever it ends up being. So running down this hypothetical, I think it just makes a ton of sense there for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's move on to the Carolina Panthers as we're down to the last handful of selections. Panthers at pick 60. This is where I'm going to have Jalen Jones come off the board. I think he just profiles as a really nice project as a man press corner. We've already seen the success they've had with J.C. Horn, so I'd like to see what they can potentially get out of Jalen Jones. Obviously, going to be a different coaching staff. Not going to be Phil Snow there as a DC who worked heavily with J.C. Horn, but if you can get an upgrade, another guy who can play that man press on their side with Brian Burns, and we've already added an edge rusher as well here in the second round. Said this a lot of times, now that Panthers defense gets that much scarier, which they already have some nice pieces in play here. Thought about safety, somebody who could play over the top, maybe like a Jordan Battle to pair up with Jeremy Chin, excuse me. But Battle we're going to talk about here in a moment. But nonetheless, decided to go corner here, higher position value. But I also think there's some higher upside if you find that number 2 shutdown guy. CJ Henderson, unfortunately, hasn't really worked out yet. But 6'2" and a guy who, especially this year, best year of his career at Texas A&M. So kind of moving in the right direction. Going to test well as well. So I'm intrigued where his stock goes, but I think this day 2 conversation is about right, late second round. That's pretty solid value for the Panthers to add a corner to potentially be the guy opposite of J.C. Horn. As promised, Buffalo Bills, I'm going to have Jordan Battle be the selection here. I kind of deliberated between Jamie Robinson and Jordan Battle earlier, so whichever one, in this situation Pittsburgh takes, I'd love to see the Bills add the other. But, Micah Hyde is going to be playing this week in the divisional round, so that's a huge addition, but there's only so many years left with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, so you got to start thinking about the future. And then Damar Hamlin was the guy. He was that third safety. I don't want to speculate. I don't know what the future of his football career holds. So I just don't want to assume there's anything there. You know what assuming does? Makes an ass out of you and some guy named Meh. So don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and add a guy in another mix. And I love Jordan Battle, especially here late second round. I think you could go as high as, somewhere in the top 40. I'm a big Jordan Battle guy. May not be the most insane athlete, but an instinctual football player, high football IQ, really good zone coverage, specifically right around that first down marker, kind of like we were talking about with Minkah earlier. He got 10 yards away from the line of scrimmage where you're not having to worry about the over-the-top speed as much. Man, he is really sound in zone coverage there. And he can also man up against tight ends in man coverage. I think he really does have that skill set with a solid frame to go with it. So his 40 times can be an interesting one that I'm watching, because if, it's better than expected, then you also add in the cards being a true deep free safety, and I think his stock gets that much higher. So I'm a big Jordan Battle guy, and I really don't know why some people aren't really talking about him anymore. Then we get to the Kansas City Chiefs here at 62. We went edge, and now I'm going to give him a project tackle. I don't love that because Lucas Niang ultimately didn't really work out, and they might be in a spot where they're needing 2 tackles, right? Like they don't bring back Orlando Brown Jr., they're looking for a left tackle replacement, and Andrew Wiley is not very good there at right tackle, and unfortunately Lucas Niang has not been able to win that job at right tackle. So you could be looking at Kansas City looking at 2 bookend tackles, or needing 2 bookend tackles. So Mock is definitely a work in progress, this former tight end, but he is an awesome athlete, and he flies all over the field at North Dakota State, and you can see his athleticism on display, specifically in the run game. So a project worth taking on, and maybe, kind of like what we talked about with Bernard Ryman, the athleticism eventually just kind of matches with the technical ability, and then you get a awesome tackle, but it'll take some work. I think I feel more confident with this pick if they do figure something out with Orlando Brown Jr. and you can kind of work him into a competition there at right tackle versus hey, we have 2 starting tackle needs and Mock's just going to have to be one of them, because I'm not sure, at least not week 1, that he'll be ready to roll. Then we get to the Philadelphia Eagles. This is technically the last pick of the second round, but we will go ahead and give you the first pick of the third round. Eagles, let's add Jahmyr Gibbs. I've had the running back slide. We had Bijan go 29 to the Bills. Then here Jahmyr Gibbs falls to the last pick of the second round. I don't think either one of those guys falls that far, but it's hard to find where you want to put a running back because, where's that position value match up with the draft value, right? So here for the Eagles, though, Miles Sanders is a free agent, Boston Scott's a free agent, and on top of the work that you did in the first round, adding a corner, adding an edge, now you just get an awesome running back that I think would be a great addition into that offense. One, a great pure runner, but also an awesome pass catcher to add in the mix with obviously Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Wes Watkins, all those offensive weapons they already have, that Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen offense. So Jahmyr Gibbs would just be, getting the rich richer here. So great value there. And if you fell that far, I think the Eagles would be sprinting that card in. And then to round things out, the first pick of the third round, I'm going to go into your offensive line for the Chicago Bears. I'm going to go Steve Avila. Thinking he's probably a left guard of the future for the Bears, and he played really, really well at TCU. I know the last taste in our mouth for TCU was getting absolutely stomped by Georgia, but take that game away from his resume, and he really has stood out over his time with the Horned Frogs. I think this is a nice addition, and also I think he can play right guard, maybe be able to work him in at center. So for a Bears interior offensive line that I think can get better, specifically in pass protection, Avila definitely a solid option there, and he was a really good pass protector for TCU. But that is going to do it for this updated NFL mock draft. I'm going to try to save this so I can scroll through one last time. But nonetheless, tell me what you think about this mock draft down below in the comment section. If this were to play out the way I had it, who's your favorite team and what would you grade this mock draft? Love to hear your thoughts, whether you love it, you didn't like it, and if you didn't like it, let me know why. Let me hear what you had a problem with, and I'll respond to every comment. So let's talk about this mock draft, and let's talk about some football down below in the comment section. But hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. Hit the like button if you did. And if you want more draft content in your life, more NFL content in general, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. I've been posting daily over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to try to continue that momentum forward all the way up through April of this year when we get the NFL draft. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.